workplace is certainly an uphill battle for many women, so it may come as a surprise that more than 80% of women don't want to work for another woman. Well, why? Lucy Brogden joins us now to find out more. Good morning, Lucy.
Hey, Lucy. How are you? Welcome.
This is fascinating research. Tell us about this study.
Well, my study was quite anecdotal. I was doing career coaching a couple of years ago with men and women, broad range of backgrounds. And when you're doing that work, you say to people, what's the next job look like? And I suddenly got struck by the number of women that could articulate the companies they wanted to work for, the type of work, and then consistently they'd say, oh, by the way, I don't want to work for another woman. So I started to track these numbers, and we got to around 80%. I asked colleagues, and they were getting similar numbers. And I knew that was, you know, a small, not very scientific sample. But if you go to the literature, there's huge studies all replicating these findings. Gallup in the US has actually tracked this for 60 years, and we're still not shifting the data too much, which is really a shame.
It checks out with in workplaces I've been in, there have been huge schisms between female employees and female bosses where it was pretty much an all-out Cold War. Like it was, and you know, not talking and
do you know why, Lucy?
Undermining.
Are there reasons given? Are they competitive with?
There's issues of competitiveness, I think, certainly, and you know, our stereotypes are quite primal. So I think it's really incumbent on women to continually check those. If we don't acknowledge behaviour, we can't change it. So new women coming into the workforce have to understand that just because they have a female boss, she's not their best friend. She's a boss. She's got a job to do and be a boss.
And one of the things that raised me, you remember the surgeon Gabrielle McMullen who blew the whistle on sexism in the medical industry, and she talks about how often when you have an industry where there is actually so male dominated that if a woman cracks through and actually makes it to the top level, it's so rare and they feel so sort of lucky to have gotten there that they will actively undermine other women coming through because I think, well, I've made it and I've got the spot for the woman and that's it. I'm going to cut everyone off at the legs.
In my experience, I've had one or two female bosses, and I've always found them to be an ally and quite supportive. So that's been my experience. I haven't really found, you know, maybe I'm going against your findings, Lucy. But I also think that a woman leader needs to be sort of wise and supportive as well. And so perhaps, I don't know, as you say, once they get to that position, they become really protective of it.
And that the data does bear that out. And I think, you know, I'm always mindful of Madeleine Albright's great comment, there's a special place in hell for women that don't look after other women.
I love that quote because I think as a woman, that comes with a responsibility to look after other, you know, women.
And congratulations to the two feminists on this channel. You literally just confessed to the exact reason why so many women prefer to work for a man instead of a fellow woman. You literally just did. Because I'll be straight up honest with you, everybody, from what I have seen multiple times over, doesn't matter if it's work, school, church, you name it. Whenever there's like so many groups of women, one of the common dynamics I've seen is that it doesn't matter how overly broad or illegal their fellow woman's BS is, as a direct result of the feminist movement, if you don't side with her, every one of your other fellow women is going to turn on you. They'll treat you like a deserter. And the more and more you stand your ground and not agree with them, or refuse to side with them, get this. The more and more feral their attack on you will become. Similar to that of piranhas basically turning and devouring one of their injures. It literally will be. A few examples for you. Two examples for you actually. Before I got engaged to Carlene, there was a time when I was engaged to a woman here in the West, as you already know, and I broke off the engagement because after 6 months of being engaged, instead of doing any work on the wedding at all, like any at all, we were still trying to focus on resolving my ex's mother's temper tantrum over me saying the word no to buying a 10-carat diamond ring and throwing away literally everything I built here in Florida to move into a one-bedroom Airbnb that my ex's mother apparently built to keep her daughter in well into her adult years. And let me tell you, this was illegal. I told her it was illegal. And yet, my ex's older sister, if she fully understood it was illegal, she fully told me that she would commit the crime of perjury to cover for her mom. She will. And during that 6-month process, guess what? My ex's mother's temper tantrum just got more and more feral and more out of control, to the point where you can't really unsee it. Or there's no real way you cannot see it. There really isn't. Another example for you guys, my red pill moment, which you'll know, I'll add it in the description. I'll add a link to it in the description. Get this. I was told straight up that I wouldn't be allowed to volunteer to serve God at my church. At a church I was a part of since 2016 to 2024, Mosaic Church, until I agreed to parent full-grown adult women who I have no legal obligations to. Like, that's just completely absurd. It's completely total BS. But I was told that the reason for this was it was the only way how these full-grown adult women can feel comfortable and safe. Yeah, see what I'm saying? I left. And get this. It doesn't matter how many women, even when I showed that exact same recording to multiple other women, there were so many women who were actively trying to defend it. The number of women who were willing to call it out and say, hey, you're going way too far with this, were very much in the minority. It really was. Also, like I said before, I don't really approve sex work. I really don't. But I was willing to play devil's advocate and try to figure out why so many women were why there was such a huge push to legalize sex work here in the United States. And guess what I found out? I found out that the majority of the reasons why women choose to go into the sex work industry on their own free will was because they were financially screwed over by their fellow women, to the extent where going into sex work was literally the only means of financial recovery, effective means of financial recovery, on this planet that actually exists. That really was the case for the majority of women who choosing to go into the sex work industry. Another thing I want to point out is that we've all seen that study, that public health study, that says that by 2030, 48 to 51% of Western women will be single and childless to the end of their days. Well, I also looked into that as well. And one of the things I noticed is that there are lots of women here in the West who had access to a good man. Who they definitely identified as husband material early on. They definitely did. However, the relationship fell apart, not because of anything the man did, but because your fellow women invited themselves into the relationship for the sole purpose of interfering with it. And you, madam, just couldn't really tell them to back off. Nothing you did to say to them to back off convinced them to leave. And the thing is, I know a lot of women here in the West, because of the feminist movement, they keep saying they're strong and independent women who don't need no man. But in reality, from what I've been seeing, not the majority of you ladies, not all of you, but the majority of you, when it comes to standing up to your fellow women, the good majority of you pretty much suck at that. You really do. Like, you let your fellow women behave and do whatever they like. And personally, I think that harms women I think that's very incredibly harmful to a woman. In fact, I think it's more harmful to a woman than a woman actually being raped. I really do. Because the fact of the matter is, since you're refusing to hold your fellow women accountable, and you don't want men to do it either, guess what? Mental growth and responsibility and maturity, it's not biological. It's learned through self-reflection. So when women are just not being taught to self-reflect, you're not holding them accountable, they don't learn. Like, their mental growth does not extend past that of a child. And yeah, I do understand the rape is pretty horrible. I do. But here's the thing. The thing is about rape is that, medically speaking, depending on how severe your case is, you can recover. You can. Like, the damage to your life is salvageable. But depriving a woman of her any real mental growth and responsibility and maturity because you're not holding them accountable for their behavior, because, hey, you're not allowed to because of the feminist movement. And literally, I'll be honest with you, the damage to a woman's life there, as well as the other damages I pointed out, all this stuff is permanent. It is. That's going to be your life. That's your whole life forever. Like, when you're financially screwed over by your fellow women to the point where sex work is your only means of financial recovery that actually exists on the planet, because, hey, you couldn't stand up to your fellow women, guess what? Unlike rape, that damage to your life is permanent. It really is. Sorry, everybody, but that's the truth. Anyways,